this handout is a good summary of all this. It's not something that's not covered in the text. I wanted to make sure that you had this. Some of this is covered in the handout that I gave you, but not on a chart like this. And I like this chart because it talks about the different systems. Manual guidance versus automated guidance. LED light bar, essentially that's what we were using, just the light bar itself. And we had a price range, $3,000 to $4,000, but this is a little bit old, and I showed you some that were running $1,000. GPS is dropping down. Everybody's selling that light bar now, and where in the past only a couple of groups would sell that light bar. Pass-to-pass accuracy, that's at 15 minutes. If I'm doing this, going down one pass, and I'm coming back 15 minutes later, how accurate is my GPS? And they say plus or minus 8 inches. And that varies by the driver. But the source for this is WAS and OmniStar. And so that's the accuracy that they're giving you for those two sources. I think OmniStar is better than WAS from all my observations, testing out different units for different individuals and with military, actually, GPS. And OmniStar is more reliable and gives you better accuracy. But we're talking meter accuracy versus maybe 3-meter accuracy. So if you can live with 3-meter accuracy, WAS is cheap, but it is fairly low in the sky. Entry level, easy to set up and learn to use. Huh? I don't know, maybe. There is some operator learning that needs to go on with those LED light bars. Now, this would be with that graphic display, and that's where you actually have a map set up. So instead of just a light bar, you have some kind of map that might be set up like this. That kind of shows you where you are, where your swath is, and maybe your direction. So that would be a lot easier to use in the field. And a lot of people are moving to that. But now, instead of LEDs that pop up, you've got to have a display. And so that makes it a little bit more expensive. $4,000 to $7,500. Now, I think that price is going to drop, especially with GPS units coming out in automobiles. Those things are only $99 now, right? And you've got background maps and you've got all sorts of stuff on that. So that technology, once it hits, moves away from specified applications to the general use, price usually drops in a hurry. Again, the accuracy is plus or minus 8 inches, pass to pass, using the same technology. Lower fatigue, added features, you get a little bit more out of that. It's not stating the static accuracy there. Not exactly sure why. But like I said, for OmniStar GPS, you get about a meter, and for WAS, it's about 3 meters. Now, if you move towards automated guidance systems, that means it's somehow controlling the steering wheel, then you can see that the price increases dramatically. And that's because you have mechanisms. You have to have control systems. You have to figure out where you're at. It takes a little bit more effort. Again, this is GPS, WAS, and OmniStar. Accuracy plus or minus 40 inches, which is a little bit over a meter. So you want to think of this, why not stick that up there as your static accuracy? And so that's what they're presenting here. Major fatigue reduction, that means you can just sit there and read a paper or do whatever while the thing's driving itself. A lot of times these things come to the end of the road and they shut off, and you actually have to make the turn itself, line it back up, and then let go and let it take over. So it's not completely hands-free. Decimeter accuracy, a decimeter is 10 centimeters, and so we're talking about pass-to-pass accuracy. Now this is OmniStar HP, which stands for high precision. The OmniStar unit that we were using is what's referred to as code phase OmniStar, using the RTTM SC104 type of format, pseudo range corrections, and the rate of the range corrections. This OmniStar HP is for a receiver that's using carrier phase in which we're measuring the pseudo ranges from what's the L1 and the L2 carriers. So we're measuring pseudo ranges not based on the code that's coming down, but on the carrier or the frequency. And we're counting how many wavelengths of that as it comes down. Now that's a little bit, those units are obviously more accurate. However, they tend to be less reliable. If all of a sudden I go under a tree, then instead of trying to measure the code from the satellite, and I'm trying to measure the carrier or the frequency, I will lose them. And on the go, what they call carrier phase ambiguity resolution, meaning can I count the number of wavelengths from that satellite to the receiver, is very difficult to do. And a lot of times, if you were carrier phase, that includes RTK, any kind of carrier phase, and you lost your contact with your satellite, you'd have to stop and regain that. Now, a lot of them have a situation where if you're running carrier phase and you lose your lock, as they say, on your satellite, so you can't count the frequencies anymore, then you basically go into code phase. You go into this mode until you regain that lock, and then you jump back into carrier phase. When I say code phase, I'm talking about code phase differential correction. Now, how would that be shown on your GPS quality indicator? How would your GGA string or your RMC string indicate that you've moved from carrier phase differential correction to code phase differential correction?
Your indicator jumped from a 2 to a 3.
2 to a 3.
That'd be.
Okay, that's a quality fix indicator. But I thought it was just 0, 1, and 2. But actually, Will's right. It does jump. There are new fixed indicators that are out there. Several of the new fixed indicators are RTK differential correction. And another one is running on INS. I mentioned this briefly when we talked about the NEMA strings, where INS is inertia navigation system, meaning if I lose my GPS entirely, blacked out or whatever, somebody throws a wet towel over the antenna, then I'm still moving. If I know the direction of travel and I know the bearing, then I can predict where I am. But in a lot of these older units, you only have 0, 1, and 2. And so you don't have an indication that I'm running off of RTK differential or I'm not. And also you don't have the information that, oh, I've still got a fix, but it's an INS fix. It's an inertia navigation fix. It's not a GPS fix. So they've modified that GGA string to include those additional positional indicators. And so the answer that Will gave us is correct. If I'm running off of this for differential correction, typically I will have a 2 there for differential correction, or a 3 if it's carrier phase. And I think that's coming out in what's called the NEMA 2000 revision for the NEMA standards. Okay, true static accuracy. Don't know what that means, but these are all true static accuracies. But greatly reduced skip or overlap. So this is this greater accuracy of driving where they're actually driving the vehicle itself. So we're going from plus or minus 40 inches, which is, a couple of steps like that, to plus or minus 4 inches. Just that big. And then, so that's pretty accurate. Then we move to RTK. And RTK is carrier phase, but it's not using a satellite broadcast. It's not utilizing another type of base station broadcast that might be coming over a wireless phone. But it's coming off of a radio broadcast from your own base station that's set up locally. That means that somebody off in the field finds a base station, finds a position, sets up their own base station, and then sends carrier phase differential